No one in Maple Ridge could have imagined that the quiet drive a mother took to pick up her children would end in a disappearance that shook the entire community, or that the very man she once trusted would become the center of a mystery filled with secrets, fear, and betrayal. Emma Harris, 32, was known for her warmth and unshakable devotion to her two young children, Lily and Connor. She worked as a receptionist at a small dental clinic and juggled long hours with school pickups, bedtime stories, and the endless tasks of single motherhood. Her world revolved around her children, and anyone who knew her admired the calm strength she carried through every challenge. Her relationship with her ex-partner, Mark Sullivan, had been complicated for years. Mark was confident and charming on the surface, but behind closed doors he struggled with control, jealousy, and an unpredictable temper. After their separation, Emma did everything in her power to keep their interaction civil for the sake of the children. She never spoke ill of him, even on the days when his sharp comments lingered in her mind long after she had driven away. Still, she followed every custody agreement, every schedule, and every drop-off without fail. Even when she felt uneasy, she hid it behind a polite smile. On the morning of November 3rd, she left home believing the visit would be like all the others, quick, routine, and uneventful. She texted her sister, Amy, a simple message before getting into her car, "On my way to Mark's. I'll call you when I'm back." But that call never came. Hours passed with no word from Emma. At first, Amy tried to stay calm, telling herself that maybe Emma had decided to stay for lunch with the kids. But as the afternoon faded into evening, a tight worry curled in her stomach. She called Emma repeatedly, each ring stretching the silence even thinner. By nightfall, she drove to Emma's townhouse, the lights still off, the car absent, the warmth missing. That was when panic finally settled in. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The next morning, after a sleepless night filled with unanswered calls and messages, Amy reported her sister missing. Detectives arrived quickly. Emma's family and friends gathered outside her home, exchanging fearful glances, each one trying to hold on to hope even as dread crept in. Search teams combed through nearby roads and parks. Flyers went up around town. Neighbors volunteered to check wooded trails and quiet backroads. But from the very beginning, investigators noticed a troubling pattern in Emma's timeline. Every trace of her movements, from her phone signal to her last confirmed location, pointed to the same place. Mark Sullivan's house. When questioned, Mark claimed Emma had never arrived. He said he had waited for her and eventually assumed she was running late. His voice was calm, almost rehearsed. And yet detectives sensed something beneath the surface, a tension in the way he spoke, a stiffness in his posture, a quiet dread in the air around him. As the hours turned into days, the investigation only grew more unsettling. Detectives began focusing on the home where Emma had allegedly never shown up, and what they uncovered inside would darken the case far beyond a simple disappearance. Detectives entered Mark Sullivan's home on the afternoon of November 6, 3 days after Emma vanished. The house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, its shutters closed tightly, as if trying to hide what waited inside. From the outside, everything looked ordinary: trimmed hedges, a blue sedan in the driveway, children's toys left in the yard. But once investigators crossed the threshold, the air shifted. A sharp chemical odor drifted through the entryway, biting at their noses. It wasn't the faint scent of household cleaner, it was stronger, heavier, as though someone had tried far too hard to scrub something away. Mark claimed he'd been deep cleaning, because the kids had made a mess. But the officers noticed immediately that the carpets were damp, the baseboards gleaming unnaturally, and several pieces of furniture were missing entirely. A large rug had been rolled up and shoved into the garage. A coffee table was gone. A section of the hardwood floor had been freshly sanded. Nothing about it matched the story of a simple cleanup. In the kitchen, detectives found a trash bin filled with empty containers of industrial-strength cleaner, not the kind typically found in a suburban home. There were also torn towels, sponges missing pieces, and a single latex glove stuck to the bottom of the bin as though it had been dropped hastily. Then came something even stranger. In Mark's office drawer, investigators discovered a handwritten document, stamped clumsily with a notary seal that was clearly fake. The paper stated that Emma was voluntarily surrendering full custody of the children to Mark and his wife, Rachel. It was dated the morning she disappeared. The signature at the bottom was shaky, the letters malformed and uneven. A handwriting analyst would later determine it was forged, but even in that moment, detectives knew something was terribly off. Rachel Sullivan, Mark's new spouse, hovered nearby during the initial search, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her voice quivered each time she tried to explain their weekend activities. She claimed she and Mark had not seen Emma at all. She claimed they'd been at home the day she vanished. But security footage from a nearby hardware store soon contradicted that. That same morning, November 3rd, Mark and Rachel were captured purchasing large quantities of bleach, gloves, tarps, heavy-duty plastic sheeting, rope, and a variety of tools. Their receipts showed they paid in cash. Cameras caught them loading these items into the trunk of their car, their movements quick and stiff, their eyes darting around the parking lot. Detectives exchanged grim looks as they reviewed the footage. These weren't supplies for a household project. These were supplies meant for concealing something far darker. The investigation moved quickly now. Search warrants expanded. Teams combed through Mark's garage, his yard, his car. They found traces of bleach residue in odd places, the back seat, under the floor mats, along the trunk lining. In the yard, patches of disturbed soil raised immediate concern. While investigators collected evidence, Emma's family clung to hope. Her sister Amy visited the police station every day, pleading for updates, her voice cracking each time she asked, "Have you found anything? Anything at all?" Each time, detectives met her with careful honesty, the search was ongoing, and every lead mattered. But beneath the surface, the truth was becoming harder to ignore. Emma hadn't simply vanished. Someone had tried very hard to erase her. And the deeper investigators dug into Mark and Rachel's movements after November 3rd, across state lines, with the children in tow, the more the case transformed from a missing person investigation into something far more chilling. As detectives pieced together the couple's timeline, a troubling picture emerged. On the evening of Emma's disappearance, instead of staying home as they claimed, Mark and Rachel had packed their SUV with clothes, blankets, and children's toys. By sunrise the next morning, they were already crossing the state border into Tennessee. What they didn't realize was that investigators had already obtained their vehicle's plate reads from traffic cameras. Each timestamp painted a clear story, a hasty departure, a route carefully chosen to avoid major interstates, and several unexplained stops in remote areas far from towns or gas stations. When the couple finally resurfaced 2 days later in a small rural town near Cherokee National Forest, their behavior instantly caught the attention of locals. A clerk at a gas station remembered them distinctly, a tense man, a woman with trembling hands, and 2 quiet children sitting in the back seat. But it wasn't the awkwardness that stuck with the clerk. It was their questions. According to the witness, Mark leaned over the counter and asked, "Where's the nearest place with deep water?" "Somewhere isolated, somewhere wildlife could get to something before anyone else found it." The clerk had been too stunned to answer fully, mumbling directions that he immediately regretted giving. After the couple left, he stared at their taillights disappearing into the trees and felt a cold unease settle in his stomach. When he later saw Emma's missing person alert online, he called the police at once. Meanwhile, investigators continued searching Mark's home. In a drawer tucked behind scattered papers, they discovered a notebook belonging to Rachel. Inside were pages of what appeared to be anxious ramblings, some crossed out repeatedly, others written in shaky, hurried strokes. Among the entries were disturbing notes. "We have to stick to the story. They can't prove anything without her. Mark says it's the only way." One page stood out more than the rest. It read, If anyone finds this, it wasn't my idea. I didn't want to help. I just wanted our life to be normal again." Detectives exchanged heavy glances. It wasn't a confession, but it was close. The search shifted to a new focal point: water. Lakes, reservoirs, slow-moving rivers, and protected forest areas, all places the couple might have visited during their flight. 3 days later, a break came from an unlikely place. Hikers reported seeing something floating near the reeds of a secluded cove in a wide, tree-shadowed lake miles from where Mark and Rachel were last seen. Deputies arrived within the hour, their boats gliding across the still surface. The water was calm and dark, the surrounding woods thick and quiet. What they discovered there would end the search, and change the tone of the investigation forever. Emma's remains had surfaced. Wrapped in discarded tarp material and caught against a tangle of roots, her body showed clear signs of a violent end. Though time in the water had taken its toll, forensic experts could still identify injuries that were unmistakably deliberate. Back at headquarters, Amy collapsed when detectives told her. Her hands shook as she whispered, she just wanted to get her kids. That's all she wanted. The confirmation of Emma's death shifted everything. No more searching. No more hoping she might still be alive. Now, the focus turned to finding the people responsible. And as investigators traced Mark and Rachel's trail deeper into Tennessee, they realized the couple had left behind more clues than they ever intended, including digital footprints that would soon expose every step they had tried so desperately to hide. The discovery of Emma's body shifted the investigation into relentless overdrive. What had begun as a missing person report was now a homicide case with 2 suspects traveling across state lines, and detectives were determined not to let them disappear again. Authorities expanded the search overnight, coordinating with Tennessee State Police and federal investigators. The couple had fled into remote backroads, but modern tracking left shadows where they once believed they had covered their tracks. Detectives began with their digital footprint. Mark's cell phone had been turned off shortly after leaving Maple Ridge, but not before pinging a tower near the lake where Emma was found. That single ping, logged automatically before the device went dark, placed him miles from where he claimed to be. Rachel's phone told an even clearer story. Though she tried to delete her navigation history, investigators recovered timestamps showing multiple searches. How long for a body to sink, wildlife eating remains, remote water access near Cherokee Forest, how to avoid police tracking. Each recovered query tightened the noose. Then came the surveillance footage. Cameras outside a rural supply store captured Mark purchasing a small boat anchor, a weighted chain, and thick nylon rope, items he bought just hours before the couple drove near the lake. Rachel stood beside him, her eyes downcast, her hands gripping her phone as though she wished she were anywhere else. Witnesses remembered them too. A farm owner later described a couple parked at the far end of his property line, arguing in hushed, frantic tones. He recalled the woman wiping her face repeatedly, as if she'd been crying. When he approached to ask if they needed help, the man rolled up the window before the woman could speak. Every sighting formed another puzzle piece. With each one, the image grew darker, and clearer. As the investigation progressed, the children became a crucial factor. Lily, only 8 years old, had been silent during the couple's frantic drive through Tennessee, but she remembered things adults might overlook. When social workers finally reached her, she described a night when her father woke her suddenly, telling her they were going somewhere special. She remembered Rachel whispering urgently, "Hurry, we don't have much time." She also mentioned something else. Something investigators could never forget. "We stopped near a lake," she said softly. "Daddy took a big bag out of the car. Rachel told me not to look, so I didn't." Police exchanged grim looks, knowing more than enough of what that bag had been. As pressure closed in, the couple began unraveling. At a motel near Pigeon Forge, the clerk reported seeing them arguing in the parking lot, Rachel's voice breaking as she said, "I can't do this anymore." The clerk thought it was a simple domestic dispute, until he recognized their faces on the news the next morning. By then, the couple had fled again. But they had left behind crucial evidence in the motel room, a half-burned notepad, its top sheet charred but still legible enough to reveal a message scrawled in jagged handwriting. "Stick to the plan. If one of us talks, it's over." The next page held Rachel's handwriting instead, the words faint but desperate. "I didn't think this would go this far. I want to go home." It was clearer now than ever, the couple was fracturing, fear eating away at whatever unity once held them together. With every discovery, detectives drew closer. The manhunt was no longer a matter of if they'd be caught, only when. And when authorities finally located the couple outside a rundown cabin near the foothills, the tension exploded into a moment that would set the stage for a courtroom battle neither suspect could escape. Officers surrounded the secluded cabin just after dawn, their boots crunching softly over frost-coated leaves. The location was deep in the foothills, far from any main road. The windows were covered with blankets, the chimney cold, the air still. It was the kind of hideout chosen by people who had run out of options. Inside, Mark and Rachel sat at a small wooden table, their faces pale in the dim light. The children slept in the adjoining room, unaware of the crisis unfolding around them. When officers announced themselves, everything fell apart at once. Rachel broke first. She stood with her hands raised, trembling uncontrollably as she whispered, "Please, please don't hurt the kids." Mark tried to bolt toward the back door, but officers intercepted him in seconds. When he realized there was no escape, he slumped to the ground, not with sorrow, but with the weary frustration of a man who understood the illusion of control had slipped from his hands. Both were taken into custody. The children were gently escorted away, confused and frightened. Lily clung to a teddy bear, asking if she could call Aunt Amy. One officer quietly promised she'd be with family soon. Back in Maple Ridge, the arrest made headlines instantly. The community watched in stunned silence as the full story unfolded: Emma's disappearance, the forged custody document, the staged cleanup, the flight across state lines, and the horrifying discovery in the lake. The sheer weight of the evidence painted a chilling picture. Prosecutors charged both suspects with multiple counts, including murder, conspiracy, and evidence tampering. Mark and Rachel were tried separately, each scrambling to distance themselves from the other. Mark's trial. Mark Sullivan entered the courtroom in shackles, his once confident demeanor replaced with rigid defiance. His defense strategy was clear: blame Rachel. He claimed she had panicked after a heated argument with Emma, insisting he had only helped her out of fear. But prosecutors had prepared a devastating rebuttal. Digital records, receipts, surveillance footage, and forensic evidence aligned in a clean, damning arc. The physical injuries Emma sustained showed force and intention, not an accident, not an emotional outburst, but a deliberate act. The supposedly missing household items matched the impressions found on Emma's remains. The forged custody document bore clear signs of Mark's handwriting. Witness after witness described the couple's disturbing behavior during their flight, including the gas station clerk's testimony about Mark's chilling question regarding deep, isolated water. When the verdict was announced, the courtroom fell silent. Guilty. On all major counts. Mark was sentenced to life in prison. Rachel's trial. Rachel's trial was different, quieter, more sorrowful. She entered the courtroom visibly shaken, her voice unsteady as she took the stand. Unlike Mark, she didn't deny involvement. Instead, she insisted she had acted under pressure, that Mark had manipulated and frightened her, and that she had been terrified to defy him. Her defense argued she had been swept into the chaos of a man determined to control every outcome. But the prosecution highlighted her searches, her writings, her presence during every key moment. Fear might have played a part, but participation had been undeniable. In the end, the jury found her guilty of multiple charges, including conspiracy and tampering. Though she avoided a life sentence, she received decades behind bars, a future shaped by silence, regret, and choices she could never undo. As the trials came to an end, Emma's family sat together in the front row, holding hands through every verdict. They had not come for revenge, they had come for answers, for accountability, for a sense that Emma's voice had finally been heard in a courtroom that spoke for her. Mark and Rachel left the courthouse in separate vehicles, bound for separate facilities. Their partnership, once united by secrecy and control, had dissolved into blame, bitterness, and isolation. But the story wasn't over for Emma's children. In the weeks following the convictions, Maple Ridge slowly tried to regain its rhythm, though the shadows of the tragedy lingered in the quiet spaces of daily life. For Emma's family, the verdicts brought a sense of justice, but no true relief. Justice could punish the guilty, it could not return the mother who had been stolen from them. Emma's children, Lily and Connor, were placed in the care of their Aunt Amy, who welcomed them into her home without a moment of hesitation. Her house, once calm and orderly, now echoed with the sounds of homework sessions, bedtime routines, and the soft cries that came late at night when Lily asked why her mom wasn't coming back. Amy answered each question with as much honesty as their young hearts could bear, holding them close as they navigated a grief far too heavy for their age. Counselors visited weekly, helping the children understand the storm they had been swept into. Lily spoke about the night drive, the whispered arguments, and the quiet fear she felt without understanding why. Connor, younger and less aware, clung to his sister constantly. Yet even in their pain, both children carried pieces of Emma, her gentleness, her warmth, her quiet courage. The community rallied around Amy, dropping off meals, toys, school supplies, and heartfelt letters. Despite the darkness that had shaken their town, people came together, determined to help the family rebuild. Meanwhile, behind concrete walls and locked gates, the lives of the two people responsible for Emma's death drifted in opposite directions. Mark Sullivan began his life sentence with the same stubborn defiance he showed in court. He refused therapy, refused interviews, and refused to acknowledge the verdict that defined the rest of his life. The confidence that once shaped his identity dissolved into isolation, the control he once clung to now gone forever. Rachel Sullivan, serving multiple decades in prison, followed a different path. She withdrew into herself, her earlier panic giving way to quiet remorse. She wrote long letters to her parents that she never sent and spent her therapy session speaking about the moments she wished she had run, the signs she had ignored, the choices she now understood had no return. Yet remorse could not erase involvement, and every day she woke to the reality she had helped create. For detectives, the case remained one of the most chilling they had ever encountered, not because of elaborate schemes or complex motives, but because of its simplicity. A mother had gone to pick up her children, a routine moment filled with ordinary love. And in that simplicity lay the tragedy, she never saw the danger she was walking into. On the anniversary of Emma's death, her family gathered at the lakeside memorial built by neighbors and friends. Candles flickered in the soft twilight, their flames swaying gently with the breeze. Amy stood with the children beside her, holding their hands as she read a short message she had written. Emma was light. She lived gently, loved deeply, and gave her entire world to her children. We honor her not in the way she died, but in the way she lived, with kindness, with courage, and with a heart that never stopped giving. Lily placed a small bouquet of wildflowers at the edge of the water, flowers she said her mother would have liked. Connor released a paper lantern, watching it rise into the dusky sky. The lake was quiet again, peaceful, untouched by the horror it had once hidden. And as the lantern drifted upward, casting a warm glow across the darkening water, the message of Emma's life, and the weight of her loss, settled into the hearts of everyone present. In the end, Emma Harris's story became more than a tragic crime, it became a reminder that love, trust, and hope can be fragile, and that danger can hide behind familiar doors. But her memory lives on through her children, through the community that now protects them, and through the quiet courage she carried until her final breath.